Welcome to the deep dive. I'm so glad you're joining us today because we are tackling a problem that frustrates almost anyone who has ever built something, sold something, or honestly even just tried to pitch a new idea to their boss or their team.
Oh, absolutely.
Have you ever had that experience where you absolutely know
Yeah,
that your product or your idea is incredible?
right.
You've poured your heart into it, the engineering is flawless, the logic is sound, but when you actually try to explain it to someone in the real world, they just give you this blank stare.
Yeah, the polite nod.
Exactly. They politely nod, maybe they ask a confused question, but fundamentally, they just don't get it.
It is a remarkably common and frankly painful experience.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually leads founders and creators to assume there is something wrong with the product itself, or worse, that the customer just isn't smart enough to understand it.
Right.
But the reality is almost always a failure of context.
Which is exactly what we are going to fix today. Today's stack of notes is built entirely around a brilliant summary of April Dunford's book, Obviously Awesome. And our mission for this deep dive is to shortcut your path to mastering product positioning. We want to get you to that magical place where your customers instantly get it, buy it, and love it. Because having a groundbreaking product simply isn't enough if it's trapped in a market or a context where nobody understands what it's actually supposed to do.
What is so vital to take away from Dunford's work is that effective positioning isn't accidental. It doesn't just naturally happen as a byproduct of having a good product.
Right.
It requires a highly deliberate, systematic approach. Positioning is fundamentally about shifting how your customers perceive value. You, as the creator or the marketer, must actively choose the context in which your product will be evaluated. If you don't choose that context,
The customer will guess.
exactly, and they usually guess wrong.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, the business world has tried to solve this with what we call traditional positioning statements.
Oh, the Mad Libs template.
Yes. If you've ever taken a marketing class, you probably know the exact format.
Yeah.
It goes something like, for insert target market, our insert product is a insert category that provides insert benefit.
Yeah.
But the source material points out that these traditional statements are completely ineffective in the real world.
They fall flat for a few reasons. First, they are often way too brief to capture the actual nuance of what makes a product special. Second, they feel totally contrived. I mean, no one actually speaks like that in a sales meeting or on a landing page.
No.
But most importantly, they completely fail to address what we can call positioning baggage.
Positioning baggage. I love that term.
It is a profound concept, really. Products are very often viewed through a narrow historical lens. When a company creates something, they instinctively anchor it to whatever the initial idea was. That history becomes baggage, making it incredibly hard to see alternative uses or entirely different markets where the product might actually be far more valuable. You have to acknowledge this baggage and actively let it go if you want to find the space where your product can truly excel.
The history of the product acts like an anchor holding it back. There's a classic real-world example in the notes about this. Arm & Hammer baking soda.
A perfect example.
Originally, it's positioned strictly as a baking aid. That was its history. That was its baggage. But the company realized it had this other incredible, unique attribute. It absorbs smells.
Right.
By shedding that historical baggage of being just for baking, they transitioned it into a completely new category as an odor eliminator. They didn't change the chemical makeup of the product at all. They just changed the context.
We can see a much more modern tech example of this in the text with OTA Motors. It perfectly illustrates how dangerous positioning baggage can be. Originally, they viewed their offering as general-purpose robots.
Which sounds cool, but I imagine calling it a robot comes with a massive set of unhelpful expectations.
It creates a nightmare scenario for a sales team. By calling themselves robots, they were practically begging potential customers to compare them to multi-billion-dollar established robotics vendors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. When a buyer hears general-purpose robot, they immediately picture complex, highly customized assembly line arms or sci-fi humanoids. OTA Motors became a tiny, confusing player in a giant generalized pond. They were forcing their customers to figure out how this specific machine fit into the vast world of robotics.
So how did they fix it? How did they shed that robot baggage?
They executed a strategic repositioning by changing their entire frame of reference. They stopped using the word robot altogether. Instead, they redefined their offering as self-driving vehicles for industrial uses.
Oh, wow. That instantly changes the mental picture. Now I'm picturing something moving pallets around a warehouse.
And that is the power of context. It wasn't just a clever marketing tweak. By shifting to self-driving vehicles, it provided a crystal clear context for their customers. Buyers instantly understood what the product did, what problem it solved, and what existing budget it should come out of.
Right, the logistics budget, not the robotics R&D budget.
Precisely. That new frame of reference accelerated their sales, massively increased investor interest, and gained them serious industry recognition. They stopped competing with robotics giants and started dominating the industrial transport space.
They changed the entire game they were playing. Which brings us to the core of how you actually do this for your own ideas. How do you systematically find that perfect context?
Right.
The text outlines an interconnected framework for unique positioning. It's made up of 5 distinct components, plus 1 bonus component, and they have to be tackled in a very specific logical order.
The sequence is non-negotiable because each step builds the necessary foundation for the next. You cannot skip ahead. The very first component is establishing your competitive alternatives. But the crucial nuance here is that this must be viewed entirely from the customer's perspective, not the company's.
Right.
You have to ask, what would the customer actually do if your solution vanished tomorrow?
And it might not be a direct competitor, right? I think a lot of
Well-
founders assume their competition is just the other startup doing a similar thing.
Yeah.
But couldn't their alternative just be a messy Excel spreadsheet or hiring a college intern or honestly just doing absolutely nothing at all?
The status quo is often the fiercest competitor any new product faces. If you don't deeply understand what customers view as their true alternative, whether that is software, manual labor, or ignoring the problem, your positioning will be completely untethered from reality.
Yeah.
This is your baseline. You cannot establish how you are different until you know exactly what standard you are being compared against.
Which flows right into the next step. Once you've figured out that baseline, where do you go? You move to your unique attributes. You have to define the specific features, capabilities, or even the unique business models your offering has that the baseline competition simply lacks. The source uses the example of having a 15-megapixel camera. It's the tangible, hard facts of what makes you different. Even if some people might perceive a feature negatively, you list it because it is undeniably uniquely yours.
What's fascinating here is that identifying those unique attributes is practically useless without the immediate next step, which is defining the value and proof. Features alone do not matter to a customer.
Right. Nobody buys a 15-megapixel camera just to own the pixels.
Exactly. It's just an abstract technical specification. It only becomes relevant when you articulate the value. It lets you print billboard-sized photos without losing any clarity. Value translates your raw attributes into actual functional benefits.
But the notes are really strict about how you present that value. It can't just be subjective marketing fluff.
Right. Customers are incredibly cynical today. They are bombarded with bold claims. If your value is just you saying our product is the easiest to use, they will ignore you. The value must be backed by verifiable facts, objective proof, and real customer feedback. You need data, case studies, or third-party validation.
Yeah.
You have to prove that your unique attribute actually delivers the benefit you claim it does.
Show, don't just tell. So now we know what we replace, what makes us different, and the provable value of that difference. The next step is finding your target market characteristics or identifying your best fit customers. Now, wait, I want to play devil's advocate here for a second. As an entrepreneur or business leader, my instinct is to cast the widest net possible. If I have a great product, I want to sell it to everyone. Doesn't shutting out 80% of the market to focus on a narrow niche mean I'm just leaving money on the table? The book says going narrow is better, but how does it justify turning away potential buyers?
It is the most common trap in business.
Yeah.
And it is driven by a fear of missing out. But targeting a broad audience inherently dilutes your message. If you try to speak to everyone, you end up speaking to no one.
Right.
Best fit customers are that highly specific segment of people who instantly resonate with your unique value. They have identifiable characteristics, behaviors, or very specific pain points that align perfectly with what you do best.
Okay.
When you focus on them, the economics of your business completely change. Because they understand your value immediately, they are significantly less price sensitive. Your sales cycles are shorter, they are much easier to retain, and they become your most vocal advocates.
Which is huge.
It is. For a growing company with limited resources, spending time trying to educate and convince a broad, skeptical audience is a fast track to running out of money. You must focus your limited resources intensely on the people who already feel the pain you solve.
So it's about finding the people who are already looking for exactly what you have, rather than trying to convince the whole world they need it. That makes perfect sense. Once you know who those best fit customers are, The final core step is choosing your market category.
Yeah.
This is the macro market and subcategory you deliberately place yourself in.
The market category acts as a vital cognitive shortcut for customer understanding. Let's say you tell a prospect you provide a CRM, customer relationship management software. By using that category, you instantly set 100 expectations in the customer's mind.
Right.
They immediately understand who in their company should use it, roughly what it should cost, and what basic features it should have. It helps them make sense of your offering and relate it to their existing knowledge.
But if you choose the wrong category, you're setting the wrong expectations.
And you force the customer to work entirely too hard to figure out what you are. If a prospect has to spend 10 minutes trying to untangle what your product actually does, you have already lost them. You want to choose a category that naturally frames your unique strengths perfectly, so the customer says, "Oh, I get it," within seconds.
And then there is a bonus component. Relevant trends. This isn't strictly required, but the notes highlight it as a powerful accelerator. This is about aligning your product with massive current industry trends, like artificial intelligence, remote work, or mobility. It creates a sense of agency and context for potential buyers. It makes your offering feel timely and highly relevant to the boardroom conversations they are already having.
The source material offers a very strong caution here, though. Leveraging trends is powerful, but it must be handled with extreme care. The trend must genuinely align with your product's core strengths in your specific market context. If trend doesn't naturally fit your positioning, forcing it will only muddle your message.
Right, you don't want to be pitching blockchain for toasters just because blockchain happens to be trending on tech blogs.
Exactly.
So we have these components, we know the theory, but how do we actually deploy them out in the wild? The book outlines 3 distinct styles of positioning that you can choose from based on your unique situation.
The 3 styles essentially dictate your posture toward the market. The first is head-to-head. This is when you are competing directly in an established market against the big players. To survive this, you must have a highly credible, undeniable competitive advantage.
Okay.
The second style is big fish, small pond. This involves targeting a highly specific subsegment of an existing market that has unmet needs. You are choosing to dominate a niche rather than fight for scraps in the broader market. And the third is create a new game, which involves establishing an entirely new market category.
Let's look at the case studies for these because they really bring the concepts to life. I was reading the notes on Janus Systems for the big fish, small pond strategy. They were a customer relationship management provider, a standard CRM, but they were really struggling.
They were.
They were going head-to-head against Siebel Systems, which was the massive dominant gorilla in the CRM market at the time. How did they use this framework to survive?
They realized they couldn't win a general feature war against Siebel, so they pivoted. They used the big fish, small pond strategy and narrowed their focus exclusively to investment banks.
Just investment banks.
Only them. By abandoning the general market and focusing only on that highly specific subsegment, they could tailor their unique attributes perfectly to the complex, high-security needs of bankers. Siebel's general products suddenly looked clunky and inadequate to an investment banker compared to Janus' hyper-tailored solution. This deliberate shift in positioning led to massive revenue growth and culminated in a highly lucrative acquisition.
They just changed the pond.
Yes.
The Wattpad case study completely flipped my understanding of the third style, creating a new game. Wattpad started out as a mobile reading app, a social storytelling platform where people wrote and read stories on their phones. But how did they use this framework to become a global entertainment company?
It was a brilliant evolution based on recognizing their true unique attributes. As a mobile reading app, they were in a crowded, low-margin category. But they realized they were gathering massive, unprecedented amounts of data on storytelling trends, what characters people liked, what plot twists kept them reading.
Right.
After seeing some early success in adapting a few of their popular stories for television, they realized their true value wasn't the reading app itself, it was the data.
Wow.
They transitioned to working with major media brands, studios, and publishers. They completely redefined themselves not as an app, but as a global entertainment company powered by data. They created a new game where their unique attribute reader data was infinitely more valuable than it was in the simple mobile app category.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's talk about that bonus component using trends. The case study for Redgate software blew my mind. Redgate was already highly successful. They were a leader in the database tools market with over 800,000 users.
Yeah, they were huge.
They weren't a struggling startup trying to find their footing, but they had a major perception problem. Customers viewed their tools as a necessary utility, but not urgent. They certainly weren't viewed as a cool or strategic priority. Why do they need to change?
In B2B software sales, if your product isn't tied to an urgent strategic priority, you will constantly lose budget to whatever the current hot topic is. Redgate had a great product, but they were losing momentum because they weren't part of the big conversations happening at the executive level.
So they looked at the landscape and identified this rising trend of DevOps, this massive movement in the software world to combine software development and IT operations to make things move faster. How do they attach themselves to that without just slapping a trendy buzzword on their website?
They realized that their existing database tools were actually critical to making DevOps work efficiently. The database is often the bottleneck in software development. So they aligned their positioning directly with this trend. They didn't change a single line of code in their software, they changed their story.
Interesting.
They started creating high-value content around the concept of database DevOps. They entirely retrained their sales team to stop pitching database utilities and start consulting with development teams on how to unblock their DevOps initiatives.
That's incredibly smart.
By connecting their established, somewhat boring product to a high-priority, urgent trend, they radically shifted customer perception. They saw a 100% rise in inbound leads, and customers started purchasing multiple products at once. They became a strategic priority simply by shifting their frame of reference.
So, what does this all mean for you listening right now? We've talked about the theory, the alternatives, the unique attributes, the best fit customers. But here's the trap. You can do all this theoretical work, you can have a great whiteboard session, but if you don't implement it correctly in your day-to-day business, it completely falls apart. How do companies actually deploy this?
The implementation is where the friction happens. Positioning cannot be developed in a vacuum. It is fundamentally a cross-functional team sport. If you lock the marketing team in a room to write the positioning, the sales team will reject it because it doesn't reflect the realities of the deals they are trying to close.
Yeah, the classic sales versus marketing divide.
Exactly. And product development will ignore it because they are building for a different use case. A successful positioning process requires bringing together sales, marketing, customer success, and product development. You have to hash out those differing assumptions. And crucially, this effort must be led by the business leader responsible for the product, usually the CEO or the founders. If leadership doesn't actively own and enforce the new positioning, the organization will just default back to its old baggage.
Right. You get everyone in a room, you argue it out, you shed your baggage, but you can't just have a great offsite meeting and expect everything to magically change on Monday morning. You need a tangible output. The book recommends creating what they call the positioning canvas.
The positioning canvas is a brilliant, highly functional tool for ensuring consistency across the entire company. It is a single-page, concise summary of your positioning strategy. When marketing writes a broad, generic website, or when a salesperson goes entirely off script just to close a bad fit deal, it damages the company. The canvas stops those messaging fractures.
It gets everyone singing from the exact same song sheet.
Yeah.
And the structure of this canvas is really straightforward. It captures all the hard work you've just done. It includes the product name and a one-line description. It clearly states the market category and relevant subcategories. It lists the competitive alternative, what the customer would use if you didn't exist. It details your unique attributes. It clearly spells out the provable value those attributes provide. And finally, it defines the target customers, the specific behaviors and traits of those best fit prospects.
Yes.
If you have this one single piece of paper, your marketing team knows exactly what pain points to highlight in their ad campaigns. Your sales team knows exactly which leads to qualify and which to politely turn away. And your product team knows exactly what features to build next to serve those specific best fit customers.
Without that centralized document acting as an anchor, the abstract strategy of positioning never translates into the daily operational reality of the business. The canvas is what makes the theory actionable.
Which brings us right back to why this matters so much to you. Whether you are an entrepreneur launching a startup, a marketer trying to generate better leads, a salesperson trying to close a massive deal, or just someone trying to communicate a complex new idea to your department, your success relies entirely on your audience understanding your value. Don't waste your limited time, energy, and resources trying to be everything to everyone. Find your best fit customers, deeply understand what they compare you to, and position yourself in the exact category that makes your unique strengths painfully obvious.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is vital to remember that positioning is never static. It is not a set it and forget it exercise. Markets evolve constantly. Competitors introduce new features. Customer pain points shift due to macroeconomic changes. The hot trends of today become the outdated standard practices of tomorrow. You must be prepared to constantly evaluate and iterate on your positioning canvas as the context around your product changes.
It's a living, breathing strategy. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We've talked entirely about products and companies today. We've talked about shedding historical baggage and finding new contexts.
We have.
But think about how this applies to you. Think about your own career, your own skills, or your resume. If you completely stripped away your current job title and you erased the historical baggage of the industry you currently work in, what are your truly unique attributes? If you looked at your own skills without that historical anchor, what entirely different professional category or industry are you perfectly suited to dominate right now? What is the unexpected context where your biggest perceived weakness suddenly becomes an unbeatable strength?
That is the exact question that unlocks truly awesome positioning, both for products and for people.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. We will see you next time.